It doesn't even feel like February. It really doesn't. I mean, I'm glad it doesn't feel like April or March or any other month right now, because you know what it does feel like? Is that I'm floating in a limbo. Yeah, I have been watching almost nightly. I have been watching different things. I've talked about this before. I watch either things like Twitch or YouTube or whatever. I've gotten away from the streaming services, not for any particular reason, although I'll touch on that here in a second. The majority of the time, I've been watching things about psychology, therapy, mental illness, various things like that. I watched a segment that was on the Joe Rogan show. I don't normally watch Joe Rogan stuff, and I apologize if I talked about this previously. And it had a fellow on there whose name escapes me now, but he was friends with Joe Rogan and also Anthony Bourdain, and the subject had switched over to how angry he was at Anthony Bourdain for killing himself. And I was a little hesitant to say that, but I can't stand the term unaliving. It just makes me angry. Context is important, and unfortunately in today's very driven society, we've got to make sure we don't offend anyone. The truth is, that's what he did, and he robbed a lot of people of somebody who they cared about, and also silenced a voice that was needed today. So I don't know if it's doing me any good. I don't know if it's holding me back. I got to thinking about that, and somebody asked what this was that I'm wearing. It's well, I call it a serape, but it's got a hole here, and it's got a hood, and it's got beautiful Ecuadorian work on it. And so I picked one up, and I really liked it a lot. It's the warmest fucking thing. I have a lot of stuff. I have it's made out of alpaca. Well, when I first put it on, I felt like something out of The Emperor's New Groove, but I really love it. And it's right up there with like a lot of my Civil War stuff that's like wool, heavy garment stuff for winter. I wish it was more appropriate to be able to wear that stuff out and be okay with it. I wouldn't want to wear this out just because I wouldn't want to get it dirty or messed up. It's just a nice, warm home studio thing to wear. And the cats really like it too. No, so getting back to the whole thing with the whole mental health aspect and all that, I was really kind of alarmed because I had wanted to, focus and learn more about this stuff. And with a recent session that I'd been able to talk to my therapist about a lot of things I was going through. And he reiterated that, I need to slow down. I need to not be so interested in trying. Well, there's nothing wrong with the interest, but it's how I'm pursuing it without focusing on what I need to know. And I have a really weird mentality on this sort of thing. And it doesn't have to just do with mental health. I'll give you a perfectly good example. The other day, I simply meant to look up something about sourdough bread. I went down a rabbit hole. I think we've all done something like that where like 2 a.m, you're just like, oh my God, that's how Blue Jays do the thing, or whatever it is, right? Like, I didn't know that, tigers could play the banjo. And you end up going down this really deep dive. And it's the strangest shit to me, because for me, I do it and then I want to learn more about it. And I become obsessed with that thing in that moment. And they often lead to lifetime sort of obsessions that are micro obsessions and hobbies that come up and pop up every great once in a while. I'll give you one really, really good example. I've talked about them before. I don't have any. The albums are actually stored on a shelf over there. But I have a bunch of pressed pennies. That's like a crazy thing I love. And a few people have given me some and everything. But for me, it's the whole thing of traveling. I have a special folio that is for the ones that have been given to me. But I belong to the pennycollectors.com fandom, and it really makes me laugh whenever I talk to people, I'm like, no, there's like pressed pennies everywhere, especially like the national park systems and stuff. And then there's tokens. That's sort of, all those little minutia details are things I thrive on. And so when it comes to learning about mental health or other things like that, or psilocybin or any of these other things that go into, different ways that they're dealing with people that, have all kinds of issues they're dealing with, it becomes such a deep dive for me because I want to learn more, because I'd like to be able to help myself, but not just myself. I want to be able to help other people too. So it ends up leading into this whole other chasm of thought processes, and I just feel freaking lost half the time. But it's also comforting because I feel like I'm learning. In fact, today that was something that I spoke to my therapist about, was that, I don't like the fact that the aspect of neuroplasticity for me is going away, that as I get older, it's going to be less and less. Right now, I've mentioned this before, I'm learning 4 different languages. So I'm learning German, I'm relearning Spanish, relearning Italian, and brushing up on French. And it has been really weird seeing how that stuff filters in and out there. And then on top of that, the other thing I've been doing, this is like a total pipe dream for next year, is I would like, since I'm always doing this kung fu shit with my hands, I would actually really like to, boy, I'm going to eat some crow if I don't do this now, because I'm fucking admitting it on video. I've been learning American Sign Language very slowly. And I really want to learn that. And one of the things I thought was, because I'm always explaining and finger gunning and doing all these things and fucking jazz hands with my hands, why not learn some American Sign Language? And so then that way when I'm talking, it's almost like subtitles, but it would be that extra thing where I could practice during the videos that I record. I don't know why. It's like half the time, like I even struggle sometimes. I had recorded a playthrough of the game Love is Dead, a wonderful indie game. And I put the first one up because it's kind of funny. I'm so monotone in it. I want to die, but at the same time, like, the playthrough was fine. I definitely had a lot on my mind. I hadn't gotten this recorded yet, so I was like, it's okay, fine. I'll put it up there. But if for the rest of the segments of the game, I'm definitely going to amp it up a little bit more. I can definitely get into a game too much. If you guys have watched my Limbo playthrough, I get a little too intense at times, but still very fun. Anyway, going back to the whole streaming thing that I mentioned earlier, there is one aspect, and I'll show you here. Like, if you look at this, scroll. This is fucked up. So Netflix of Japan, it's nothing new to see anime show up on streaming services, new original stuff. Komi Can't Communicate is one of my favorites. Seeing Blue Period and some of these other ones show up on there is great. This is one where, because of quote-unquote labor shortage, they opted to use AI-driven aspects to populate the backgrounds. The characters, from what I understand, are still animated by people, either in software traditionally. I didn't look that far, but that is still the human quotient in there. But it is alarming that this is happening. In a lot of the posts I have seen after this article on Vice got out, there are a ton of people that are like, well, it's about time. And it's always these bastards that are like, it's about time. You artists are always a top notch. You need to be taken down a bit. From where? I know nobody really that is like living high off the hog. And no, I take it back. I know maybe 3 people that are pretty well off as artists. But they work so freaking hard. Like, oh, it's ungodly. Like, it should be illegal how much hustle they have to do. I just wonder what is going to happen moving forward. Something is off on this. And this is just the beginning. A lot of them, one comment I saw was like, well, this is good, because imagine if you're an imaginative person and you really want to be able to create something, and you could put everything together using AI. You could create the music, you could create the voice acting, you could do the artwork, you could do the animation in it. With what? With AI? Then you didn't do shit. I pissed off a lot of people the other day because it was a guy that was like, well, what do you suggest that I do, if I can't use AI art? Am I just supposed to sit there? I was like, learn to draw. And then when you take that into consideration, I at least understand, like many other people do, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And if we have the ability to do something and do it well, we celebrate that. We push forward with it and we try and enjoy it. If you don't, it can be a challenge. Learning 4 languages is a challenge, but I use Duolingo and it's fun. Am I going to ever be a translator, an interpreter, anything? No. Am I going to be able to conversationally, casually talk to people when I'm on vacation? Maybe. AI is one of those things where I'm not saying it doesn't have good things. It does, just not in the aspect of a creative scope. I don't know, man. So anyway, and with the therapy session, everything seemed to go better. I think I've got a game plan now for how I'm going to head on that, because there's a bunch of stuff I need to really work through. And I'm happy that I have the ability to be able to have a plan to move forward with that stuff and maybe clear my head. I actually was, right before the playthrough and right before this, I was starting to sink into a depressive mode. And I was like, okay, chill. One of the things I've done, and I've talked about this before, is the whole containers thing. Like I picture something that is solidified. I've got a container over here. You know those metal containers that are used for watercolor? If you're an artist, you know what I'm talking about. And they lock down. They're wonderful. Well, whenever you're using containers, you're supposed to stuff the bad things that are in there, lock it down mentally, and then put them to the side and then deal with each one. And that helps a lot. But there are times whenever that can be overwhelmed. And I was trying to find different ways to be able to work with taking a challenge and understanding that there's both a good and a bad to every element, that there can be something that will work out and it'll be fine for me. And that is a very challenging thing to do. Most of the time for me, it's a situation where I will so much think about the negative or how tired I am or just something like that, and I don't have an upswing ready for myself, a positive outlook or an outcome that I go, well, but this happened. And so that makes it really challenging for me to get through things, and it locks me up a lot. I know that even when I was talking about something I've noticed is even in doing this series, which has been really eye-opening, sincerely, watching them back on occasion, like when I'm working on art and some of these other things I'm working on, I've been watching them and listening to myself. And it is certainly a wild trip to see like how my moods have swung, what I've thought, all these things. It's been really, it's no lie, it's a fucking trip. But I'm learning, and that's something I hadn't expected. I knew that I'd probably gain some new insight about what I'm going through and how I might evolve over the year as a creative and in other facets of my life. But this is definitely different. And then, of course, you know, all I could think to myself was like, well, you know, would you be doing more if you weren't doing these things? Yeah, probably. But I'm still stuck in this whole zone of like, I've got to find some sort of peace in my mind as to what I'm trying to do and where I'm heading in my life. You guys can catch me in the next episode. Thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. I am never going to be a world-class computer programmer. I barely understood the shit I did at Hallmark half the time. I knew it was code, but I didn't always know what I was doing. Probably explains a lot. Pardon my monotone voice. I will jazz it up. Fuck, why do I do that? It's like, why are my thumbs still up? You can see. I don't know why I'm not hot. Fuck. You guys can catch me in another episode after this. I'm just fucking up. I am totally fucking up.